Bengals are listening to offers on Trey Hendrickson. Now, I want to sort through some of the reporting here because it is important. Because I know of at least one of the actual Bengals reporters quickly came out and said that it's not like the Bengals are actively making calls to other teams. They're just, if teams are calling them, they're listening to offers, which they should at this point. And part of the reason why this is tricky is because Trey Hendrickson is going into his year 31 season, as in his age 31 season. So this is not apples to apples to Khalil Mack getting traded.
Not at all.
The situation's somewhat similar in the timeline of how this has played out throughout the offseason. And now that we're getting closer and closer to the start of the regular season, the holdout continues. The Bengals might be forced to make a hard decision. But they're not going to get a huge haul like Khalil Mack, which is one of the reasons why, it's tough because I don't think the Bengals are going to get what they want for him or more value than he would otherwise be worth if he's going to play for you this year. They had a god-awful defense last season, so losing a guy that had 17 and a half sacks on that god-awful defense certainly does not make you anywhere close to better. So this is tricky to figure out what's actually going to happen. I will say this. If I'm Ryan Poles, I am making a phone call to Cincinnati to at least try to figure out what the compensation is. And then I'd also make a follow-up phone call to his agent to figure out what they're looking for a long-term contract. Because remember, this is the last year of his current deal in Cincinnati. This is way more enticing to me than Matt Judon was a year ago, which we know that they were in on. But since then, the Bears have signed Dayo Odeyingbo and spent significant money on him. If this is a player and draft capital that the Bengals are looking for, I would be willing to give that up for a guy that had 17 and a half sacks the last two seasons, each of the last two seasons. Yeah. It's more the contract that you're going to have to give up here. Now, one thing I want to bring up, though, yes, he's 31 years old. He's only played 8 seasons, though. So it's not always about age. It's about wear and tear. Now, 8 seasons for a D lineman is still a decent amount, but I think you're still hoping that you can get 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 4 more years. I mean, I would think so.
Sure.
So if there's some type of deal where the compensation makes sense and you can get him to tack on 2 or 3 more years onto this deal where there's an out in a couple years, I would seriously consider it based on what I've seen from the Bears pass rush in practice so far, which Montez Sweat had a really good start to camp, kind of tailed off a little bit. The interior I like a lot. Grady Jarrett's having a great camp. Dexter's having a great camp. We've talked a lot about that. I don't know that I've written Dayo Odeyingbo's number down more than like 3 times.
Right.
And that's what's concerning to me. So you got a lot of money already tied up in those 2 guys on the edge. But on the other hand, you're not 1 player away. So
well, that's the hard part. You already paid Dayo Odeyingbo. You know?
Yeah.
You already paid him. So you're going to be investing a lot of money between Sweat, Odeyingbo, and then Trey Hendrickson. I mean, you certainly have a very good pass rush and a very good rotation.
What if I said it was Austin Booker and a 3rd-round pick?
Right, but then you have to pay him.
Right, I'm paying him.
Right, of course. You're not trading for him if you're not paying him.
Okay, but I'm asking you, would you do that deal? 3rd-round pick, Austin Booker, and you're paying him.
Well, it ain't my money, so... but at the same time...
Yeah, but it is their salary cap.
Exactly.
That still affects your health.
This isn't like baseball where you have an unlimited salary cap. So you can say it ain't my money, but as a Bears fan, you have to be cognizant of how much money they allocate to certain positions, and pass rushing is certainly an important position on a team. and having a game wrecker like Trey Hendrickson could become a trickle-down effect for that entire defensive line. So, I'm not going to complain if they do it. The trade, the asking price wouldn't be that high. So I wouldn't be afraid of either of those things. I think the biggest thing when you look at the Trey Hendrickson thought is keeping him out of Green Bay. I think that's another team that would be looking at him as an addition. So, if you bring him in to block him from going to Green Bay and having to deal with him for the next 4 years, that I think also could be added into the calculation.
Yeah, and Vince says, come on, Hogue, Cincy would laugh at that offer. They might. That's part of the problem. I don't know what Cincinnati's going to do here, because when you talk about a player who's 31 and you have to pay him, it's not a Khalil Mack trade. It's not a Jesus. Micah Parsons, yeah. What Micah Parsons' deal would be, right? If you're going to trade for him. So they're in a tough spot. I don't think they're going to get crazy offers that blow them away.
Mm-hmm.
The win in it for them is that they don't have to pay him.
Right.
That's what's and so if I'm the Bengals, I say, dude, suit up. We still need you this year. Our defense is gonna suck. We have a great quarterback. Our offense should still be good. We need you. So I that's if I had to guess where this ends up, it's just sort of a stalemate.
Well, you saw this with Matthew Judon last year, right? With the Patriots. He ends up at the Falcons for a 3rd-round pick. So I think that's right where the market is. Now, they traded for him, and then I think Matthew Judon's still a free agent.
Yeah, and also it is a comparable sort of situation, but Hendrickson's way better than Judon.
Well, yeah, he's led the league in sacks the last 2 years. Yeah. But it is comparable in the fact that he's 31 years old. You don't trade for – yes, you're trading for past production, but you're bringing him to your team for what he's going to do the next 2 years, not what he's done the last 2 years. So that's great. He's led the league in sacks the last 2 years. What's he going to do for your team? And Matthew Judon was somebody that was, certainly a guy that made a lot of plays, and now he's for whatever reason, still sitting on the free agent market. So, I don't know. Would you trade for Trey Hendrickson just to have him for the year?
Well, I actually would, but I don't know if Trey would want that.
Right.
Maybe
he would just because he's so mad at Cincinnati. It's
if
a personal dig at them.
If I have to play in one spot versus the other on a 1-year deal,
not giving them my time,
right?
But I agree. He wants to be paid, which rightfully so. He's led the league in sacks the last 2 years.